I found a dirty secret about my sister-in-law. I did not expose her at first. I tried to get her help. I introduced her to a therapist I knew very closely. Long story short, it didn't work. And then she decides to blow up on me during a family gathering and called me a gold digger. Right here in front of the entire family. So you know what I did? I said, okay, you want to play games? I'm going to expose you. And I sang like a canary. I told everybody her dark, dirty secret. I met my husband John 3 years ago at a coffee shop. It was a 1 in 100 chance encounter, and neither of us could have expected where it would lead us. After a series of exciting dates enjoying the city nightlife, we soon began a strong relationship that would endure to this very day. It wasn't all good news and good vibes, however. While I was completely smitten with my partner, the same could not be said for his family. His mother and father, Terry and Trent, were an elderly couple who accepted me with open arms. For whatever reason, his sister, Karen, on the other hand, held a particularly fond hatred for me. While she expressed all her opinions openly and without remorse, I never knew what I had done to deserve to be the focus of her hate. This resentment continued from our first date to our wedding reception a year later. At one particular family gathering recently, when I felt courageous after a cocktail or two, I talked back to Karen, asking her, quote, not to be so judgmental. The faces around the dining table looked like I had shot the family dog. Karen was furious, of course, and she accused me of only being with her brother because he was successful, and that I had no place in this family anyways. The room fell silent after that, and only John could stand up to even look me in the eye. While he knew about the animosity between his sister and me, he had always seen a different side of her and was too scared of losing her to confront her for me. To him, Karen was always his precious little sister. But to me, she was the devil. A few weeks later, I was helping my husband sort out his parents' filing cabinets. After retirement, they stopped keeping it organized, and in the years that followed, it became a mess of receipts, bank statements, and birthday cards. Karen had a small apartment to herself, so was not living with them at the time, but for whatever reason, she had always had a better excuse when she was asked to help them. This ranged from small things like tidying up to even getting groceries or running them to a hospital appointment. The same unreliable Karen. This time, Karen was taking the parents out shopping, leaving us to handle the house alone. Well, sorting between the stacks of documents, I found a number of pages marked for a inheritance bank account. Remembering that a while back, John had explained he shared a bank account with his sister that his parents had prepared for when they passed away. Oh, it was not to be touched until absolutely necessary, but if it was too important not to use it, why was I finding a number of huge ATM withdrawals recently? Confused, I asked John, to which he only guessed it could be their accountant. The idea just didn't sit right with me. Something was wrong here, that I was sure of it. I was reading over and over again when it finally dawned on me. Every time money was withdrawn from this account was a day matched by Karen going on a, quote, night out. I wondered whether if I looked online there would be another withdrawal today to match her habit. I told John what I had discovered, but he didn't buy it. Not that I could blame him. Who would want to believe their close sibling was slowly stealing money from their own inheritance? I mean, he pushed me away when I pressed the issue, and refused to talk about it further. That left me with only one choice, to confront Karen directly. She might call it being nosy or worried about me, but getting less money, but I was doing it for John, even if he didn't want me to. During a bathroom break, I did a little digging and found that the bar she often visits was also right next to a renowned casino and gambling den. This was too interesting to overlook. We were still clearing the office when they returned 3 hours later, though it did look a lot tidier/emptier than when we first started. I excused myself from the room without saying why and then made my way downstairs to greet them. The parents fell onto the sofa, likely tired from a long day on their feet, while Karen turned on the kettle. She did not hear me approach, so I waited behind her hesitantly until the kettle finished screaming. She jumped slightly when I spoke to her. Her icy glare told me that she probably thought I did it to scare her. Putting the cold reception aside, I asked how her day was, a question she brushed off as she went back to her drink. Cutting out the basic nice ties, I guess, so I decided to also cut to the heart of the problem. I slammed the bank statement onto the table right next to her so that she could not avoid or ignore me entirely, and this seemed to get her attention well enough. I left the pause as she looked between me and the paper, likely expecting a reason, but I let her piece that together herself. In my silence, she grumbled and picked it up, reading through the withdrawals closely. Her eyes lit up when she finally realized what she was looking at, turning to me wide-eyed with a fearful tint, despite the fact that she obviously recognized it as she claimed ignorance about it, asking what it was and why I had it. I explained that I found it in the upstairs office, which was met by an outcry of insults and questions of, "Why am I poking around in her family's affairs?" Though I stayed calm not to engage with her. After letting her finish her little rant, I poked at her again, pointing out that each withdrawal was made before one of her, quote, wild nights. Well, the same wild night that left her in a wild swing of moods between ecstatic and miserable based on how much money she returned with. Her denial stopped when Karen saw it was pointless. Fear now overcame her anger and she fell into tears. And with the despair, she admitted everything between sobs. Karen was addicted to gambling. For months, she had been taking small amounts from the family account to fund her habits, even when she knew it was wrong. Well, I was speechless at this. I knew she was a piece of work, but this was truly awful. For so long, she had lied, cheated, and stolen from her own family, all while saying I was the one who did not belong to her. A disgusting hypocrite. Just as I turned to leave the room, I felt a sharp tug at my sleeve. Turning back, Karen began to beg me to keep her secret. I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her to go away. I wanted to tell John the truth, but looking at how pitiful she was, I felt a sting of pity. Reluctantly, I agreed not to tell anyone, only if she did. I was going to force her to face the truth, whether it was easy or not. She happily agreed and promised she would when she was ready. She was still crying when John came into the kitchen, his face shifting from confusion to deep concern. He must have known something was horribly wrong when Karen had resorted to me to cry on. Hearing him enter, she turned away and fought to control herself, wiping away the tears. But when she turned back to answer him, her eyes began to gush. Unable to stop, she fled down the hall. Stuck between telling the truth and lying to my partner, I was forced to make a pretty difficult decision. Where no answer was a good one. With regret, I told John that Karen was having a difficult time with her boyfriend today, and she needed somebody to talk to. He looked at me incredulously, but said nothing else, and the whole family was now sitting in the living room when Karen joined us. Her makeup fixed and her composure restored, I quickly briefed her on what I told John, which she was not happy about, but she was grateful that I did not tell the truth. In a spot of kindness that took us by surprise, Karen did also help up finish cleaning the office, though not without an ulterior motive, not all. I did happen to spot her swiping a few of the familiar bank statements when John was not looking, signaling me with a finger to her lips to shh. Despite everything, it looked like she was more concerned with hiding the truth than getting ready to tell it. Good thing I still had one of those pages folded neatly in my pocket, ready to use as evidence should the need come up later. Sometime later, John and I were sitting down having dinner when we heard a knock out front. Karen had decided to show up unannounced and stood miserably in the rain like a drowned rat. After bringing her inside, I went to get a towel while John talked with her. When I returned, I walked into John taking money out of his wallet while Karen looked at me unexpectedly. When I asked what was going on, he explained that she needed money for groceries, though she could not meet my gaze when I asked her directly about it. Not to mention, she had all the signs of an addict in withdrawal, and, well, I did not buy her story for a second about the groceries. If matters could not have been worse, she wanted $200 as well. I mean, what kind of late-night grocery run needs $200? Karen could not explain why she needed that much, but she was sure that she did, so I offered to go shopping with her, but she adamantly refused, and she just came for the money. Putting a little pressure on John, I managed to convince him to not spare any change for her. Wow, offering to get her items tomorrow in our own grocery run. She was furious and told me to stay out of her business. John was also now starting to get suspicious of her uncooperative and rude behavior, leaning towards siding with me on the matter. As Karen noticed she was not going to get her own way, this time she left without saying another word, only shooting me daggers across the hall before she slammed the door on her way out. I guess our friendship, if you can call it, was short-lived. Still, bitter about my reluctance to hand over what little money we had that month for what she said was groceries, Karen glared at me across the dining table. I'd always thought that Karen and John's parents liked me, or were at least happy for John, though certain things gave me doubt. They never reprimanded Karen for her outburst, staying silent whether though agreed or embarrassed, and today it looked like it would be no different. Karen decided to retell the story of her asking John for money, painting me as a horrible person who denied her because I wanted all the money for myself. She even had the nerve to drop the term gold digger. Well, a few times quite bluntly while maintaining harsh eye contact. I was furious and humiliated at the same time. I kept Karen's darkest secrets despite all the abuse she had inflicted on me over the years, and this was the thanks I got? No more. In a rare moment of defiance, I interrupted her hate speech to strike up a new topic of conversation at the table. Turning to her mother, I asked whether they had a chance to look at the new office, insisting that it was important to keep up to date with all the financial documents. Karen understood my message and immediately shut her mouth. She may have thought I dropped it as a warning, but I had no intention to make it half-measured. With everyone else curious about my question, I explained that I noticed some money missing from one of the bank statements, taking it to the paper out and putting it on the table. Karen's eyes pleaded for me to stop as they threatened to overflow again. With shock, Karen's elderly parents saw the money slowly drained from their inheritance, a worry which was now echoing with John when he realized it was not something they had done. Before their panic rose too high, I gave them the answer to their confusion. The room was quiet as all eyes fell upon Karen, who squirmed uncomfortably in her seat. Face was white as a ghost. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you guys are having an amazing day. I do have some updates for this story, 4 of them. And oh boy, things are about to get wild with Karen. If you're new to the channel and you want daily videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Guys, let's go ahead and jump into update number 1. At first, I did not think the family knew how to handle the news right. I could even see that it was a big shock for all of them. They could not have ever guessed their loving daughter or sister could so easily stab them in the back, or why she did not feel like she could tell them about it sooner. Despite the truth being plain and obvious, Karen refused to take the matter seriously, undermining her, quote, addiction as just an occasional hobby. It was more than a hobby, it was a money pit. Like a child told to eat their vegetables, it seemed that the more we pressed her for the accepting of the situation, the less she wanted to. She really was a stubborn jerk. Yes, she agreed that she liked to gamble occasionally, but never went overboard. Well, when questioned about whether she still had any of the inheritance money, however, she found an answer which was no. Evidence meant nothing to Karen, and she refused to see its seriousness even after the pattern of weekly trips and big losses. John admitted that he knew his little sister had a drinking problem, but kept it from his parents because he did not want to worry them in their old age. This finally explained why she spiraled so often with the casino right next to the bar. Time after time, Karen would go back to the bar and the casino, and she never came back with any money left. But at this point, as much as the family wanted to help Karen, she refused us. When our conversation ended, it did not fill anyone with enough confidence that they could leave things as they were. Karen was not going to change her ways without a little outside help. And a few days later, John helped his parents contact the bank to make some alterations to its security. Now, only Trent and Terry had access to the account, in hopes that cutting her off and spending would ease her out of her habit. We were visiting John's parents one morning, entering the house to find Karen screaming at her mother. Apparently, Karen had gone out the night before, likely to drink and gamble, but her fun was cut short when she was denied her cash cow. She was stomping around the room red-faced like a spoiled toddler, yelling about how unfair everything was. I could tell it was tough for them to see this side of her, the real side of her. Even I, as much as I hated the woman, did not want to see her lost in addiction. If there was a chance, there was still a good person somewhere inside there. I offered to call my therapist friend to give Karen a free consultation. While I meant it as an openly generous and caring gesture, she took it out as an act of public humiliation. In her mind, it was beneath her to resort to therapy because, quote, she was not crazy. She had plenty of colorful slurs to let me know how much worth that she held of my opinion. We could not save Karen if she didn't want to be saved. Update number 2. Hey guys, 2 days have gone by before anyone heard from or saw Karen again. She had left the house with only her handbag and her phone after another argument, which only made John and his parents worry more about her fragile state of mind. I did my best to comfort them. Karen was an adult who could fend for herself, but I could forgive them for forgetting that sometimes. Based on her frequent mood swings and bad attitude, the call came around midnight. John and I were fast asleep at the time, but somehow I was the only one that was woken up by it. I would have ignored it not for the fact that it was still ringing a few minutes later, which made me sure that it was more than a wrong number or a prank phone call. The caller was somehow worse than I imagined, as it was a very drunk and miserable Karen. When she realized I picked up instead, she just kept yelling, "Get John! Get John!" I wanted to put the phone down and ignore the whole thing, but with her volume up so high, she ended up waking him up herself through the phone. Reluctantly, I passed it over and let him handle her absolute craziness. After a few minutes of hushed words and discerning facial twitches, John puts the phone down. He repeated that she had supposedly, been having a good time at the bar when she was, quote, attacked by cops, who kidnapped her and took her to jail. Even John found the story to be so far-fetched based on the level of drunk she sounded, but he was still keen to go down to the station to see her tonight. I argued that maybe we should not get involved. Maybe a night in jail might, be the wake-up call she needed. But John would not hear it. He only wanted to get her out of jail and would worry about her and the rest later. We quickly got dressed and went down to pick her up from the station. When we arrived at the precinct, we were met with much confusion by the desk clerk, who had not expected our arrival. After a short visit and a short wait, we were directed to another cop who performed the arrest. They had very different decisions and different versions of the events. They said that they had got a call 2 hours ago about a lady who was cut off from the bar but refused to leave, getting verbal and aggressive with anyone that approached her. Arriving on the scene shortly after, they intervened in a fight that Karen had supposedly started with another lady. In her frenzy, Karen had also lashed out at the cop, and then fought against her arrest. She was in deep crap, basically. The night could have ended very differently if not for a very caring older brother and reluctantly understanding cop after we briefly touched on the stresses that she's been going through lately. Not that Karen would have thanked us for it, but I don't think she would enjoy a night in jail. We knew she was released from her cell a few moments later when we could hear her cussing the two cops out that were steering her down the hallway. Her tone quickly changed when she saw John. The angry and vengeful spits were replaced by pleading and whimpering, like she believed her little innocent girl act would work here. Well, I guess she forgot about actions and consequences. We took Karen back to our place that night under a watchful eye to prevent her from landing back in jail. She said little on the drive home and crashed as soon as she hit the sofa, leaving us to return to our own bed after a very turbulent evening. The next morning, she was a shell of her usual self. Her headache must have been severe when she had no energy to insult or argue with even me. Her memory of last night was supposedly hazy, but she did remember and thanked us for answering her call. Perhaps this would wake her up after all. Update number 3. Karen started to take things more seriously after her arrest, thankfully. The family gathered for much-needed intervention, though Karen was still against the scrutiny. After an hour of encouragement, pleading, and deep conversations, we managed to wear down her defenses, just enough that Karen broke down in tears. Karen was then able to accept that she needed help. We assured her that the family would support her every step of the way, even me, who she had even considered never to be part of the family. I put the past behind me and wanted to help. It was promising that she was starting her journey to recovery. After some light convincing from her parents, Karen asked me later about my therapist friend, and I was only too happy to set up a meeting. I was no stranger to therapy myself and thought the benefits of their advice only outweighed the stigma attached to them. Although, she may not know if she was very lucky not to be facing her demons alone. You could not have asked for a better or more supportive family than hers. With that in mind, we agreed as a couple that John and I would help pay for her treatments, especially in the first few months while it was crucial for her to get into a healthy mindset. Collectively, we thought that if we let Karen handle it alone, she would soon give up on therapy because of the added cost to her debt, and seek back into her dark thoughts and dark habits. There were times over the next week when Karen did not think she would make it. She would lash out at anyone and everyone who denied her what she wanted. But we stood beside her, even then, and waited for the storm to pass. Update number 4. Hey everyone. I had no plans to provide an update this soon. However, unexpected developments have forced my hand. Moreover, it seems that I may have jumped to conclusions prematurely, and my sister-in-law Karen has disapproved everything I previously thought to be true. Karen was ostensibly on the path to recover, maintaining sobriety for 3 months, or so we thought. It's been almost a quarter of a year since my sister-in-law began therapy. One evening, a bombshell was dropped on me by my closest friend. She had spotted Karen drinking with her friends at a local bar. I was first skeptical, but my doubts were dashed when she produced images as confirmation. Well, I was shaken, and my first thought was to face Karen. However, a nagging concern regarding her therapy narratives kept me from proceeding. Instead of confronting her directly, I decided to delve deeper into the situation. The therapist that Karen was consulting was my recommendation, and someone with whom I maintained a good rapport. So I made a visit to the therapist's office, hoping for some answers about Karen. What I was told that, there was only fueled my suspicions further. Karen had been a regular for 2 months, but the therapist disclosed that she abruptly discontinued her therapy sessions just a month ago. I dug deeper and uncovered the awful truth. I continued to follow Karen for a few days more and discovered something really unusual. Karen had not only restarted her prior drinking and gambling habits, but she had also started stealing money from my in-laws and husband for the sake of therapy. As a result, I felt obligated to tell our family the truth. I first informed my husband and, well, he too was taken back. He told me that her actions would have consequences this time. When my husband and I arrived at my in-laws' place and told them the truth, they were absolutely furious. They confronted Karen, and she initially refused, well, claiming that I was mistaken and that I had seen somebody that looked like her. But when I showed her the photos and other evidence, she simply could not resist and went to her knees, pleading with my husband and in-laws to forgive. Please give her one last opportunity. Wow. This time, my in-laws were frustrated by her actions, as she had cheated on us for her pleasure. They just told her to leave and not return until she proved herself and got rid of her gambling and drinking addictions. My husband and I, too, refused to enable her by offering her a place at our home. Now jobless and homeless, Karen is temporarily staying with a friend in a one-bedroom apartment. Well, that's probably all the updates for this one. It's been a wild ride. So this is one of those stories that doesn't really have a happy ending. It looked like Karen was going to make it through her addiction. She was getting help. She was turning over a new leaf. But she was soon discovered to be back to her old games, stealing money, drinking, and doing whatever else that she was doing, which, well, OP tried to help. But it didn't work out. I want to know from you guys, do you think that the family could have done anything different to try to get Karen to a better place mentally? I want to hear from you. Maybe somebody out there has a loved one who went through the same thing, or maybe even you've been through the same thing. Let's talk about this in the comment section down below. Guys, I want to thank you for joining me on today's video. If you're new to the channel, my name's Mr. Reddito. I drop a story every single day. So hit that subscribe button. Make sure you click the bell notifications as well, because that way it tells you when I upload. I'll see you guys in the next one, and just remember, you never know what people are going through in life. It's cool to be kind. I'll see you guys.